Hi, guys. Welcome to Own Your Essence, the podcast where healing meets empowerment. I'm your host, April DeMille, a psychic medium and a life coach specializing in grief, trauma, and toxic relationship recovery. This is a space for deep conversations, powerful transformations, and raw healing. Each week, we'll dive into soul centered topics like psychic mediumship, the supernatural, metaphysical wisdom, emotional grief, addiction, mental health, spiritual wellness, and self discovery. Through inspiring interviews and personal insights, this podcast is here to spread awareness, spark connection, and support your healing journey. If you're ready to set boundaries, reclaim your confidence, and step into your true power, you're in the right place. Let's own your essence together. Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Own Your Essence podcast, where we get to have deep transformational conversations with some of our favorite people. And as you may have noticed, I'm going to be the only host today. So I am your host, April DeMille. My buddy and my co host is not with us today, but the show must go on. So without further ado, let me drum roll our next guest. Her name is Lenore Kantor. Um, and let me read you, I'm sorry, I have to read this off my phone because I am multitasking, which I am not exactly used to doing right now. Okay, so Lenore Kantor is a transformational coach, author, mentor, career advisor, and inspirational speaker who guides smart, high achievers to greater personal growth, professional fulfillment, and higher income by overcoming their blocks to creating soul-aligned work. She is the CEO of Growth Warrior and author of So What Do You Do? The Authentic Alchemy Path to Find Who You Are. So let's give her a nice little welcome. I'm very excited to have her on. Oh, hey, we were just talking about you. So, I just actually read your introduction, and I was hoping that you could give us a little bit more. If you wanted to tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing, like how you're showing up in the world right now.
I'd love to. So, I'm a transformational coach. I work with conscious leaders, mostly really smart, high achievers who are looking to create more authenticity and alignment between their personal and professional selves. So, if you think of it as designing life and work on your own terms. And I'm also a writer, I'm the author of so, what do you do? The Authentic Alchemy Path to Find Who You Are, which is a book and workbook. So, recently came out and I got the bug. I love writing. So, I'm planning my next book soon. And yeah, that's really what I enjoy doing. I've been a career advisor for an MBA program, and I really just love working with leaders to support them to find fulfilling work.
Okay. Okay. And so I know that I read in your I think it was your bio that you were in corporate world for a long time, right?
Yeah,
So can you tell me a little bit about how you made the transition out of that and maybe even like what inspired that transition to begin with?
sure. Well, it's interesting. I think for so many of us, we are motivated in our work. We either fall into something or we do things that we're really good at. And coming out of business school, I ended up getting recruited by a bank. I had studied operations management and I ended up in a career in financial services, technology, and marketing for 20 years because I was really good at it.
Yeah.
Um, and I had helped take the company I was at public, and then they were acquired by a much larger organization. So we went from, 150 people when I joined to 300 to 50,000.
My
And
goodness, that's quite a
I,
leap.
was there for a few months working on this integration, and I came out of a meeting where I was pretty sure this project that I was leading, like nothing was going to go the way I wanted it to. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't really, this work does not align with my heart. And And I went into the bathroom and I had an emotional breakdown. I just started crying and I was like, I can't keep doing this. And I just knew that it was time for me to make a change. I'd always wanted to have my own business. And so I basically orchestrated a departure from the organization I was at over a 3-month period. I hired my replacement, and then I started my own consulting and coaching business. And initially, I was planning to do more of what I had done, which was marketing strategy for financial technology companies. And I did do that to some degree. I did want to work with more innovative, high growth businesses and, more, let's say, soul aligned founders. And I was able to do that to some degree. But I also started going much deeper in the coaching. I had gotten some coaching certification when I was still in corporate, and I had like a few clients I would see on the side. So it was really just a balance of trying to figure out like how do I combine these things in a way that feels good.
Yeah. And so can I ask you, we might have to backtrack just for a second. I know that you went through a 3-month period where you were kind of going through that transformation, I guess, or that transition rather.
Yeah.
And so what is it? Was there anything that helped calm your nervous system when you were
Mm,
inundated with like all the what ifs? How am I going to do this? Oh my God, I'm scared. Where's the money going
yeah.
to come from? All the things. Were there things that you had to practice? And what were those things?
Well, I would respond to that in a few ways. So
Okay.
when I started crying in the bathroom, I knew, okay, I have to change. Like I cannot stay.
Yeah.
So knowing and trusting that that was the right decision was important for me. And I remember saying to myself, if I hate it, I can always go back.
Yeah.
Some people don't like having a plan B, but for me, it felt reassuring to know, like, oh, well, if this really doesn't work out, that I leave and go out on my own, I could always get another job doing what I've been
Right.
doing. So
Right.
that was helpful for me. The other thing is, I actually had been seeing a coach for a while leading up to that. I had a relationship that, was kind of winding down. So I had been seeing a coach to support me in that process. So I think I had had a lot of things that I was rethinking in my life and my work around how do I want to live, like what. So thankfully I had had that support, and it was sort of funny. This woman sent me through like a battery of tests, like because I wasn't really sure I had the emotional mental makeup to be an entrepreneur, because it's really different. Like everyone in my family had their own business, but I went the corporate route intentionally because I wanted that stability,
Right.
security. So part of me was, concerned, like, oh, am I going to be able to do this? And after all these tests that I took, the feedback was, yeah, you can be an entrepreneur. And like somehow I needed that reassurance.
Yeah.
But when I got it, I was like, yeah, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And the other thing was for me, and this is one of the things I share with, with clients or students or people that I'm advising is, we don't need to do whatever we're feeling right away. Like we have
Hmm.
to learn to sit with the discomfort and the uncertainty. It's such a powerful skill, because otherwise we make decisions in the moment that are rash,
Yeah.
that we can't unmake. And so I think there was a part of me that was like, I've got to do this thoughtfully. I'm going to give myself, a glide ramp, or, like a period of time
Right.
so that I can adjust and I don't need to do it right away. Because I
Yeah.
think quitting and giving 2 weeks notice didn't feel right for me personally. It didn't feel like the right thing to do for the organization and the relationships I had. So being very thoughtful and intentional, I think, gave me the time over that 3-month period to plan, to, put in place my website. So, I was a little bit focused on the job I had, but I was mostly thinking about the future and I was doing them concurrently.
I love that. And I love that you touch base on the fact that if you don't if you aren't able to sit with the discomfort and in that integration phase, and that's where we get our most power, right?
Yeah.
And it does suck sometimes. It's super scary, and
Yeah.
our nervous system can be a wreck and all the things. But you're right. What happens is if we put all this pressure on ourselves and we make decisions from the fear instead of the alignment, then it can
Yeah.
be far worse. So I'm glad that you touched base on that.
Well, it's interesting. I will never forget. I had a client I worked with, and she was super smart, but there was something that she was having a difficult time looking at, and she would periodically blow up her life by quitting her job. Like she just would like throw it all away. And I said to her, what, like, why are you doing that? You don't need to quit. Like you can explore changing the job within the company you're working for. You can interview for a new job and make a transition. Like, but I think sometimes because there's so much underlying fear that people have or very strong emotions that they're not comfortable looking at, dealing with, sitting in, they would rather just blow up their life than sort of try to work through that discomfort.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense too. I will say, speaking from my own experience, I've been in a position where I have had to quit and blow up my life, but also that pressure was what it took for me
Yes.
to make the transition. And so those moments are also very necessary.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I call it the tower moment.
Oh,
So
for
if you're
sure.
familiar
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
tarot,
yeah,
right? Like everyone faces these periods where they're confronted with
yeah.
something. It can be, an injury, a death of a loved one, health issue, whatever.
Anything that makes your whole world fall apart.
That's right. And it
Yeah,
makes you recognize, that what you thought
yeah,
was something was actually not stable or, the right thing to support you. So there are times when it's completely warranted to
yeah,
leave. And, I do think sometimes, having worked with a lot of clients through these different transitions, people also know within themselves something is not right,
right,
and then 2 weeks later they get fired or
right.
like, so I
Yeah,
see that
yeah.
happen quite
So
frequently.
you're acknowledging that there's a difference between the patterns because like for me, I can only speak on my behalf. As a psychic medium, I would know that I had experienced what I needed to from that position,
Yeah.
and a transition would have actually made me miss out on something that I was going to grow from. And intuitively, I knew that even though I didn't know that, you know,
Yeah, I'm 100% behind. People need to feel into
for
what
sure.
is right for them.
Yeah,
And I knew for me, there wasn't, how do I say this? There can be a certain satisfaction in telling your boss, I quit.
yeah,
And sticking it to the man, right?
sure.
So I could definitely see that. But because I knew that I potentially wanted to work with a lot of the people again. There wasn't a value for me in blowing up the relationships that I had, and they did end up being very
Yeah,
important for me. So I think really what I try to recommend to people is to think through all of the implications to the extent that you can. And I always say, you kind of have to check in, listen to your heart. Part of it's your head, part of it's your heart, part of it's
right.
your gut and your intuition. Like, and if all of those things are like, I gotta leave, okay, then you have your answer.
Yeah,
But if you're conflicted, then there are probably areas that you want to work through so that when you make a choice, to the extent that you can, if it's conscious and intentional, you can feel good about it.
right. And I think that was even part of some of the self-talk I had to go through in my moments were about, okay, everything in me says I can't be here anymore. Like I can feel it.
Yeah.
even though there was a human need going, but what about money? But
Yeah, of
the
course.
rest of that still outweighed the what about money. So I knew which voice was louder, and that
Yeah.
helped me decide this is where I have to go.
Well, I think you're also alluding to something which is like trust
For
in
sure.
yourself and the
Yeah.
universe,
Yeah.
right? So when you have that, you realize that you will be supported,
Yeah.
right? If you're really following your
Even
path.
if it's not an immediate outcome, guys,
That's
because
right.
a
And
lot of times it's not.
it's very scary to feel like you're taking a leap without the
Yeah.
net. So
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
I think, how do I say this? I like to be, obviously, like you, I'm very intuitive and spiritual and kind of want people to listen to their inner wisdom, but I'm also really practical. I mean, I came out of
Yeah.
the business world, so I don't like people to take risks that create more challenges for them than they may be prepared to handle.
Yeah.
So it's really about knowing yourself
Yeah.
and what you need that can support you to the extent that you can do it from a place of being grounded and aware.
Yeah, for sure. And I would like to say that there had been times that when you're talking about the net, the safety net, the best way I could describe it was sometimes I'd felt like I'd been pushed off the edge of a cliff and I without a parachute. Only the parachute's there, you just can't see it, right? Because
Yeah,
it's behind you. So that's
yeah,
like the best way I would explain it sometimes. I feel like I just got kicked off a cliff and I can't see my parachute because it's behind me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it can be scary. So you were very blessed in the sense that you had this window to kind of transition through,
Yeah.
and you'd already been working through some coaching, so you had a lot of good tools and resources and support. What would you, hold on, I'm almost losing my headphone here. What would there be any insight or wisdom you could offer for somebody that maybe didn't have that that kind of situation. Like maybe they were pushed off the edge of the cliff or they were
Yeah.
laid off or fired and they had frantically
Well,
like, what do I do here?
it's interesting. I think, things are never what they appear. While I did have that transition period, and I remember my first 6 months of business, seemingly were really good. I had some clients right away. Um, I ended up having a lot of challenges. Several of the clients didn't pay me, and they were friends, and it was, so I went through what I like to call a period of PTSD recovery. Like it was a few years
Yeah,
of, getting over, I use the word trauma in a looser way, but being in corporate for me was, caused a lot of, um, caused me to betray myself and compromise in many ways,
for
right?
sure.
So I think there is something about when something happens to disrupt your life and your world, you need to acknowledge it. And that can be difficult and painful. So if you can do it independently, that's great, but maybe you need some support from friends, family, a healer, a counselor, a coach, whatever, to hold space for you so that you, in fact, can connect with what is going on for you and get clarity. Because I think what happens is maybe sometimes people go through something difficult and they feel they've got to soldier on and through, and they don't actually process the impact of what's happened. And then what happens is they're basically trying to go out and get something new from a place of being ungrounded, desperate, needy, or whatever. And then it's harder for them to find what it is they want. So sometimes when these issues come up and things happen, you can look at them as a sign or an opportunity that you need to be with yourself and your experience so that you can sort out what's going on and find your path forward. And sometimes that does take a little time to process, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that was beautifully said. And I would definitely agree that um, it can be very uncomfortable, and sometimes we need a lot of support. I know that in my own story, there were plenty of times that, and this doesn't relate to my present story, but in my past, even a recent past, up until I think I was probably 42, I did not have family and other people to support my journeys, and that made those very challenging
Yeah.
situations excruciating.
Yes,
And you
sure.
have to create your support system in other ways, and
Yeah.
that can take a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how do I say this? We all benefit from the support of others, whether
Yeah,
they're loved ones or chosen family or,
yeah,
support systems that we put in place, like a support team. However, I don't believe that we always have to outsource our agency. And
hmm,
so, when I wrote my book, I made it as like a self-help user manual that people can feel into their own situation and diagnose their challenges in order to have some alternatives to heal. I work with the chakras a lot.
okay,
So looking at, was it unhelpful beliefs? Do you not have a vision? Did you lose your voice? Was it
okay,
your heart? Right? Like,
yeah,
so there are ways that, we can do some of this work ourselves when we learn how to do it and have the tools. But it is hard. It is very difficult, and many of us do face those dark nights of the soul where we're being asked to step into a period of not knowing what's going on and forge a new path forward.
yeah. Like we're really being initiated for shedding it all. And it's
Yeah.
so, it can be so rough for sure. So when you talk about your books, can we kind of get into some of
Yeah.
that? By the way, the covers of your books are fucking fantastic.
Oh my
I
God,
love
thank you.
them. They're so colorful.
Well,
They're so beautiful.
I have to say something. It was super important for me.
Oh, they're
I didn't
beautiful.
want this to be like a traditional job search book. The ones
Right.
that are out there are just so hard, like dull.
Yeah.
And to me, I partnered with the designer and she came up with the idea of the cauldron and the rainbow. And to me, it really does represent the alchemy because that's what we're doing. It's like we're transforming, the parts of us that we're less familiar with so that we can let our gold come through and, like really be on our path. So it was sort of important for me. And obviously, I'm working with the chakras, which are very colorful.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of practical, strategic guidance around things like, oh, well, you want to be mindful of what age you are and your stage, because that's going to impact your choices. And, I do give some very thoughtful ideas around what do you like doing? What are your strengths? What do you want to avoid? What are your values? What's your environment, right? So I tie together a lot of different things. But then with the chakras, there's also a layer of self-healing. Like you
Right.
can use this book to help you transform and unblock yourself from the ways that you are struggling. And then the other thing, alluding to what we were talking about before, is I really believe we're all on a hero's journey
Oh,
or
for sure.
hero's
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
So part of it is understanding that, and that's where I relate it to the tarot. Like we're going through these
Yeah.
phases of uncovering the different aspects of our lives that we need to understand in new ways and make sense of them. I don't believe there are any mistakes. I
Right.
think all the things that happen to us, the decisions, whether we made them consciously or unconsciously or whatever, there was a reason for them, and we get to mine that and weave it into a story that gives us meaning and purpose as we go forward.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I love that. Thank you so much for that. So on your books, when you said these were your first ones?
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's a book with a companion workbook.
Okay, I love that. I actually, I'm inspired by that because I'm also trying to get into writing books, and I have thought
Beautiful.
about adding workbook stuff to it too as well. So when you had these books published, when was that?
So I decided to self-publish. It was important for me to sort of, have
Kind of have
ownership of
control?
that
Yeah,
whole process.
yeah.
So the book went live in March, and it was
Okay.
sort of interesting because I pushed it back since Mars was retrograde for,
Ah, gotcha.
and then I went live in March and Mercury went retrograde. And I
Oh
was like,
no.
damn, I forgot about that one. So anyway,
Working with retrogrades, that's a
yeah,
whole nother
timing,
book.
timing. It's all about the timing.
Yeah, no, I love that. So I know you talked about it being an 8-step process in the book.
Yeah,
Is there any of that that you're able to share with us, or is that
sure.
more for like by the book kind of thing?
No, no, I'm happy to share.
Okay.
I think about it in four phases. So there are three main phases, which is doing the inner work,
Okay.
doing interpersonal work, how do you connect with other people, and then doing outer work, which is how do you show up in the world grounded in your truth so that you can really share your gifts.
Okay.
And then before you get into that, deep work process, I start with, I call it, phase zero, which is preparation, because I don't think people spend enough time on that, right? They may want to make a change, but then they sort of are ambivalent about it, or they're not quite ready. So I studied feng shui in addition to energy medicine, shamanic healing, coaching, like I have
Oh, I
multiple
totally want to come
modalities.
back to the feng shui.
Yeah, absolutely. So before you even start the process, I suggest that you take time to clear, because that's what creates space for you to do something new. If you're carrying
Mhm.
around all the stuff that, was weighing you down before, and, and you got clutter everywhere, like it's kind of hard to move forward.
Well, it's almost
So,
like when women are nesting before the birthing process. Like you have to sanitize and make space and do all the things to give
yes.
birth to these projects. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I also suggest that people set an intention. I personally love to work with crystals, so I recommend that they find a talisman that they
Okay.
use to guide them if they're trying to make a specific change.
Okay.
So it really is approaching the process from a different perspective than I think a lot of the job search and career guide is, you focus on your resume and you gotta get your LinkedIn and networking and
Yeah.
all of those things are important. But if you're only doing that stuff and you don't really know what you want to do, or you're
Right.
not really excited, like it's not going to help you all that
Well,
much.
and that's what I loved about the practical questions that you were helping people dig into. Like, what are you good at? And all those things, because most of the time people are so busy that they don't even have time to sit and reflect and even think about those things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of this is also, getting into sort of the layers of it. There are things we're naturally good at that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Then there are things that we do really well, but they may actually be dysfunctional, right?
Okay.
So I've worked with clients who are super organized and like the project managers and never, keep on track of details. Why? Because they had to be in their childhood because they were in a chaotic home.
Right. They didn't
Well,
have safe space.
that's right.
You're talking
So
to me right now, by the way.
yeah, well, I'm talking,
I'm an
well,
OCD freak, and that's why.
yes, a lot. And, a lot of us
Hmm.
need that feeling of control. Why are we so
Hmm.
good? Because we had to be to adapt to our life.
Yeah.
And that can be important for us. And is that the thing that we actually want to be perpetuating in how we show up all the time?
Right. And when you're always spending so much time doing that, then where are you taking away from other parts of your life that you need more balance?
Yeah, or are you so good at worrying about other people and always thinking of them that you don't ever take
Right.
care of yourself, and
Yeah.
become undervalued,
Yeah.
undercompensated, and burned out?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a real thing. It's a real issue for sure. Wow. Okay. Holy moly, lady. That's a lot of good stuff. Um, what would you say like when you're working with like clients, um, and you run into like blocks or stagnancy, would you say the most common ones probably are? And we may have discussed some of that, but
Yeah, I mean,
what
it's so funny because I am trying to simplify it because I do think in some ways everyone's a little different. I would say one of the things I see very frequently is beliefs, right? People believe something about themselves or the world that's actually not helpful for them.
okay,
For example, oh, I'm too old, I'm not going to be able to get a job. Oh, I'm too young, I don't
right.
have enough experience. Oh, I need a degree. Oh, my background is international, no one's going to hire me. Or like people have these things that they've learned from their childhood experiences. They had a bad boss, a toxic environment, whatever. So I think a lot of the things that I see that most often hold people back are these past experiences that they have internalized to mean something about who they are, and it's preventing them from moving forward. I just literally had a conversation with someone who talked about he was in a horrible, horrible environment. And so he's sort of frozen because he doesn't want to go to work again because he's afraid he's just going to be repeating
Yeah, repeating
what
that
he,
pattern.
and so, you need to help people break those patterns and realize, oh, that belief I have is actually not true, but it was important at the time and helped me get through whatever experience I was in. But now I need something new to help me for where I want to go.
Well, and I think that that's great that you incorporate the chakra work because that's where you will find those limiting beliefs and things
Yeah.
stored, like the cell memory stored in there to work through. So I love that you have like this multiple approach um, to looking at all these avenues.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I have found since I started working with the chakras for them to just be incredibly insightful and very deeply connected to, all aspects of us. And I think also, here's another theme I see. People get very focused on, oh, mindfulness, if I just meditate enough. Well, that's
Yeah.
great. But you're not just your thoughts,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a
Yeah.
whole body that's involved. There's your heart, there's your instincts, right? Your intuition, there's your experiences with money, all of these other
Yeah.
layers. And so
I like to call those mindsets toxic positivity.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think there's another expression, the spiritual bypass, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh,
that too.
everything's
Yeah.
fine. I'm just gonna do a trust fall.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes. And you also
And
need to
yeah.
kind of align
Yeah.
everything, right? Because the
Absolutely.
more aligned you are, right, that you are thinking positively, you're actually taking action. You
Yeah.
have learned what you need to know. You're connecting with people, right? So there are all of these things that we need to do to move forward when we're creating change. And I do think sometimes it can feel overwhelming, but it's part of the process of reinvention and creating something new.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you have to definitely cover all the bases, and it can be a lot, especially if you've had to do it multiple times in your life and you've had to, absolutely recreate that version of yourself however many times. It can be a lot and it can be exhausting. But on the flip side of that, um, if you're if you're not as thorough, then you get into other issues. So,
Yeah, I think it can be very natural for us to default to safety. I'm speaking from my own experience. I have another client I was working with, same thing. We did a lot of work with this person to help them adapt to their environment and step into leadership and blah, 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 blah. And then when it comes down to it, they still don't love their work.
Yeah.
So you can be the leader and the king and the CEO and all of those things, but if you don't like what you're doing, you're going to be miserable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's important to sort of really hone in on what is my truth? What is going to bring me joy? I mean, I had another client, same thing. I mean, this happens a lot. People have a certification or an association or training they did, and they feel like that defines them and they need that to be successful. Well, just because you have some degree, that doesn't mean people are going to hand you a job. And
Right.
just because you got a training doesn't mean you're actually going to enjoy that kind of work
Or even be
unless
good at it.
that's right. And so I remember I had another client, she was project manager, she was great, blah, blah, blah. She didn't like the work. She really wanted to be writing and doing research. So she, ultimately we helped her to pivot because she was like, what do I, like I keep doing this work thinking I'm going to get better, better, but I just don't really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that those, at least she has the awareness to know she doesn't like it
Yeah.
because that's the catalyst for the change. So that's really good.
But I have found it takes a while for people to get to that truth
Yeah.
because of all of the defenses that we have in place that keep us from trusting ourselves. We
Oh, for
focus
sure.
on the safety, the financial security, taking care of others, well, like all those other things that it can be hard to know what is real for us.
Yeah. Well, and it sheds some light on even situations for me myself right now because I still have like the normal human world job, Monday through Friday, and by all means I love it. I get paid to take care of a beautiful nanny family, and it's things I'd be doing at home anyway, caring for my own family and stuff. But is it what I want to do forever? No. I want to be writing. I want to be public speaking. I want to be coaching and teaching and doing all the things. So I'm also in that, how do I transition here? And there's a lot of pieces that go into that.
Yeah, I mean, there is no one right way to do it. And, I have been feeling more and more that you can call it a portfolio career or whatever, but it's sort of like there's the balancing act, it shifts. Maybe you're doing more of this thing now and you want more of this, and then
Hmm.
at some point they're half and half, and
Yeah,
then you start stepping into this one more and the
right.
other one fall. And I don't know, maybe that's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, like,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. But you're right. The process does happen. The transition does come. And so it's just knowing it's even that intuitive knowing, okay, now is the time for action. Now is the time for another step. And so yeah, you do have to really trust yourself to lean into that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think it is, like stepping stones, and a lot of it is around the beliefs. Like even
Yeah.
when you think you're ready, let's say letting go of a source of income, that
Right.
is a big deal. So you
Yeah.
have to know that, okay, am I really ready to do that? And what does that mean? And so this is where the practical elements come in. Have I cut my expenses? Do I have enough in savings? Right? Like all of these things that I think people don't always understand. And I'll also say to people, if you need a job right now, you should get yourself a job.
Yeah.
I would much rather
You
see you
still
have
have
a
to eat.
steady, that's right, have a
Yeah.
steady source of income, be financially secure, and then you can go pursue your dream
Yeah,
gig. And it
for
doesn't
sure.
need to be that you do everything at once. Like that's just not realistic.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be the tower moments and like earth-shattering, horrible traumatic experiences.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. So also, I wanted to talk to you about some feng shui stuff.
Yeah.
I think that I have not really learned a whole lot about feng
Yeah.
shui, but when I started learning a little bit about it, I learned what the Bagua map was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I learned that I was intuitively doing feng shui without realizing I was ever doing it until I
Of
learned what it
course.
was. And so
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about feng shui and how that kind of came into be.
Yeah, when COVID hit, I had a lot of stuff going on. I actually, talking about funny things, I had been recruited to be the chief marketing officer of a technology company. And I didn't really want to go back into corporate, but this was going to be like a big opportunity to potentially help take a company public again, like a big thing. And I was like, oh, maybe I could just do it for 2 years, whatever. So I was in conversation. I had received a verbal offer from the CEO. COVID hit. They went radio silent. I had given my biggest client notice that I was probably moving into this other role. And like literally, my work dried up overnight. My dad was going through challenges. He had been in dialysis, and then a friend of his, she sort of disappeared. And it was like, so there was like all of this stuff that came on. And I was like, you know what? I really have I loved interior decorating design. And so
Yeah.
I learned about the School of Intention. Dana Claudette is the teacher, and she had a program. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And I did the online training, and it just really resonated with me. Um, she takes a modern feng shui approach. So it's much more about understanding the elements, balance. There's a lot of intentionality in the process. And so the Bagua is just one of many tools, but she does not believe in some of the superstitious feng
Okay.
shui, like you can't have this thing here. So
Like the
it's
fear-based stuff.
that's right. It's
Well,
literally,
I think that was the problem I had with it actually, was some of
yeah,
it felt very like fear-based, and I'm not
yes,
into investing in that
exactly.
at all.
Yeah, so what I've learned from her and what I believe is much more supportive is really thinking about balance and also working with what you have. It's not about like, oh, I
Right.
got this, I got to, it's like, all right, how can I create more energetic flow in whatever space I'm in? What is it that I'm wanting to create? How can I do that more intentionally? And how can it feel like supportive for what you're needing? And it's a very, in my mind, sort of like joyful, intuitive process. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. I was working with a number of clients, a lot of women who were wanting more professional fulfillment. We would literally walk into their room, and all of them had like a bunch of clutter, like right in the entrance to their room.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, what, why is that there? There was
Yeah.
something that they were like not looking at. And I don't even have the Bagua in front of me. I don't remember exactly what that particular quadrant is. But it was just sort of interesting to me that like three clients in a row had like this similar pattern.
Yeah.
And, they didn't want to look in their closets. And I was like, okay, what are you hiding in the closet?
Yeah,
What
like what are you afraid to look at?
and that really was what it was about, is that there were things that they'd been avoiding around, doing more for themselves or whatever, or making the changes. And then once you help people to sort of look at those things and realize they have more control and power, stuff starts to shift, and it's really subtle. Like, oh, instead of looking at a wall, I'm going to look out a window.
Right.
Instead of keeping something that I got from my grandmother that I've never liked, I'm going to move it out of my space, and I'm going
Right.
to create a space to exercise. Like it can be whatever
Yeah.
needs to
I
be.
think there's not a one size fits all. It's
Yes.
adaptable for sure. Because, like, even intuitively, as you're talking about congested doorways, intuitively, my mind goes to, okay, clearly you don't want someone to come in. You're practicing making obstacles about letting people in. That's where I go.
Yeah.
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 So I think,
And it literally is that. It's almost like when you walk into a space, noticing, okay, what am I drawn to because it feels supportive?
right.
What am I not wanting to look at? What am I avoiding? Where do
Yeah.
I not want to go? What's that about? And then when you
Yeah.
kind of go a little deeper, it can give you a lot of insight around where the opportunities are. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, the clearing process has been a very powerful one, because what I've found is I've held on to identities much longer than I needed to. And then when I look at it like, oh, why do I have this pinstripe pantsuit and high heels since I'm working from home in the middle of the country? Like,
Yeah,
really, do I need that?
right.
And it was like, oh, it's time for me to let this go,
Yeah,
right? All of these papers and da da da. And I do bonfires, man.
yeah.
It's like,
I
or
think
I
I'm always
donate.
clearing out my cabinets and my closet probably once every 3 months. Like
Good
it's
for
just a thing I
you.
do all the time.
Well, that's great. And that I think is what creates the space and the movement for change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because again, even symbolically, it goes back to creating space for new.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one more thing I kind of wanted to touch base on with you. I'm sorry. Is you have cacao ceremonies.
Yes.
I would love to hear a little bit more about that. I have a friend that is a big fan of
Yeah.
those, and I would like to hear like how that shows up for you.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate a few years ago. I was became a member of a community. It was like a co-working community space in Lower Manhattan, and it was a beautiful group of people, and there were a lot of spiritual opportunities like breathwork classes and cacao. And so one of the women was hosting regular cacao ceremony, and it just like resonated with me. I am not a big meditator. I tried, I really did, like
Yeah.
5 minutes a day.
You
I
know, I'm
did,
not either. Like no shame. I do a lot more meditation and motion. I think some people are just
yeah.
wired different.
Yeah, so I just, after 5 days, like I can't do this anymore. So,
Yeah.
with cacao ceremony, first of all, it was chocolate, which I love. It's
Yeah,
the
who hates that?
pure form of natural dark chocolate.
Right.
And it comes from ceremonial trees that are usually tended by indigenous communities. But there's a whole connection to the Mayan cosmovision, which relates to the four directions and the elements. And it was just a beautiful sacred ceremony that for me became very deep. And so I trained with the woman who was hosting. Her name is Florencia Friedman, and she and her brother own Cacao Lab, which is they import the cacao from mostly, I believe it's Ecuador, but she had studied with shaman in Guatemala, and
Okay.
they have their products are beautiful, so I've become a brand ambassador for them.
Okay.
I don't, for me, it's really a personal practice.
Yeah.
It's a way where I can drop in and be present in the moment. I also recommend if you're interested in following, it's called The Four Pillars by Mark Elmy. He tracks
Hold
the
on one
the
second.
Mayan
I'm going to write this down.
cosmovision,
Four
and
pillars.
the four pillars. I think
Okay.
it's the fourpillars.net. And there's another woman who I love as well. Let me just see if I can tell you her name.
Okay.
Um, but they share information about the Mayan cosmovision. So it's called mayanreadings.com is the other one. And so those are two resources that I really love. And so
Okay.
you can read the energy of the day. So the Mayan cosmovision is 20 nawales or energies over 13-day cycles.
Okay.
And once you learn about it, there's a beautiful rhythm to it, and just sort of understanding that can help.
I am absolutely going to look this up. I have never
Yes,
heard of this before, so I'm definitely going
yes.
to dive in.
Yes, and I'm happy to share some resources. I can share a discount code for buying cacao, and their website has some, processes. Florence, the Cacao Lab has how to do cacao ceremony, but
Okay.
you could do it with tea also. The
Okay.
idea is that you take a moment to connect with the energy of the plant, right? It's really
Okay.
a form of a sacred plant medicine
Right.
ceremony. And you connect with your heart,
Yeah.
you connect with the ancestors, the directions, and the elements. And the sky above, the earth below, and you can set an intention for yourself. And so you can use cacao for a personal daily practice, or you can adjust the dosage. So
Okay.
if you just wanted to do it every day, I use like 2 teaspoons. If you want to go deeper and do a real like ceremonial dose, you could use 2 tablespoons. So,
Okay.
it's much more concentrated,
Yeah.
and that can put you in a very
Is it kind of like the difference between coffee and espresso? Is that kind of
well, so the
as
idea
far as like
is,
dosage?
yes, it
Shrink.
is.
Okay.
Yeah. The idea behind cacao is it's a heart uplifting, sort of you got
Superfood.
and magnesium, it's got all these feel good bliss molecules. So it's a very elevating experience.
Okay.
It can help you really connect with your heart more deeply. And so that's how I like to use it.
Okay.
Um, it's become a little bit of an expensive habit because of there are issues around cacao now. I think there was like a blight in Africa or something that's driving the price up. But you can do it periodically. You light a candle, have a fire, work with the elements. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful
It's
practice.
super ritualistic, which I love because there's
Yes.
there's definitely something meditative about that to begin with and kind of calling in the
Yes.
four corners and
Oh my
just
God, you would love it. I will often pull a card, oracle, or
okay.
tarot card, depending on the day. I might pick a crystal I want to work with.
Yeah.
Um, I like to read what the energy is. I might journal. You
Yeah.
can bring an intention. I mean, there are so many ways you can work with it. So for me, it's just become a way of like my taking time for me to kind
Yeah.
of ground in myself.
I love that. So it's become like a form of self-care for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
I love
highly
that.
recommend it.
So, Lenore, I think that you have been absolutely fabulous to have
Oh,
conversations
thank you.
with.
So
This has
great to
been
connect with you,
so
Rachel.
fun.
Yeah,
And I want to know if you can share with our guests probably the fastest way to reach you, where they can find your
sure.
books. Like, I definitely want
Yeah.
to impart them with that wisdom.
Yeah, so my website is growthwarrior.co, not .com.
Okay.
So that's my, umbrella brand. On Instagram, I'm at Lenore, Lenore Kantor, Kantor, so people can follow me there. I have a lot of folks connect with me on LinkedIn also,
Okay.
but my books are available on Amazon, and you can get
Okay.
that through my website. I do have a lot of free resources on my website. I have like a visualization. I have lots of different mystical things related to the book and guides, as well as other support to guide people to more professional fulfillment. So I would say those are the best way. And if people are interested in connecting, I do offer a complimentary discovery call. And that's really an opportunity for people to share what their challenges are, and also get some feedback from me to explore if coaching is worthwhile. So you can find the links to that in
Oh,
any of my
cool.
places. So,
I love that. You are such a magical lady, and I am just so
oh,
glad we
thank
got to
you.
connect. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, such a
Um,
pleasure, and good luck with your exciting expansion of this
yeah,
podcast. It
trying
sounds
to. We're still
wonderful.
new at this. We're still new at this, but it's coming together. It's coming along.
Well, we'll stay in touch. I'm hoping to launch a podcast myself. I've been holding off on it. I will probably do more YouTube videos and
Yeah,
then make those into podcasts. So, it is nice to share. It's really wonderful to share with people who have similar visions.
yeah, and also just so you know, a little tip on the YouTube. I You can do both now. Like you can share your
Yes.
RSS feed to YouTube, so it's really great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lenora. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here. So we're going to say goodbye and bye, guys. We'll see you on the
Nice
next
to connect.
episode. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Own Your Essence. I am beyond grateful to our guests for sharing their wisdom and to you, our listeners, for being part of this journey toward healing and empowerment. If today's conversation resonated with you, please feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this space with others who might need it. If you have questions, topic ideas, want to be a guest, or would like to work with me privately, send an email. I'd love to hear from you.